Hello, everyone. How are you? Hope you're doing well. Welcome to this webinar on behalf of the TEFL org. My name is Carl. I am here today to talk to you about an online teacher's toolkit. I'm going to be talking to you about the software and the hardware that you might need in order to be an effective and tech-savvy online teacher. So if that's the sort of thing that you're into, you've found the right webinar for yourself. As I said, my name is Carl. I work as a teacher trainer here for the TEFL org. I also work as an online examiner. I work as an online teacher. I also do some face-to-face work, and I've been lucky enough to have worked in multiple countries around the world over the last sort of 20 years. But right now, I work and live in Northern Ireland, sunny Northern Ireland today, because this is a live webinar. So if you have any questions, please do put them into the chat, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on LinkedIn, whether you're on Instagram, whatever it is, put them into the chat. They come up on my screen and I will answer those questions as we go through them. Doesn't have to be about online teaching, can be about anything at all to do with English as a foreign language or English as a second language, as our North American friends sometimes call it. I can see some hellos coming in already. Hi, Tim in New York State, that looks like. Chris in St. Albans, hi. Raminder's in London. Faith's in Italy. David's in again from Lincolnshire. Good to see you all. Please do let us know where you are tuning in from today. Right, let's get going with this presentation that I've got here. So, right, so you're going to hear a lot of different software, different websites really being thrown at you over the next sort of 20 minutes. Now, not all of them am I an expert with. These are just ones that I know of and ones that I have sort of had a look at and used. I'm not going to show you any of them because that would take too long. Basically, if you do feel like there's some that you want to use or want to know more about, obviously you can watch this again, on our YouTube channel, for example, and you can pause on a screen and go to the links and all that kind of thing. Right, so basically, first of all, I want to talk about sort of online education in general. Now, during the COVID lockdown, online education just boomed. Lots of universities. At the time, I was working for a face-to-face university that had no urge at all to do online classes. They really didn't want to do any online classes. There was a lot of pushback from some of the older teachers about doing online classes, but all of a sudden the world was locked down and the students were coming in from China, who were going to come in from China, couldn't come in. So we were having to teach people in China when we were in the UK. And all of a sudden, people had to learn how to do online teaching. And because of that sort of need, there was like this new sort of way of thinking about online education, and it is still increasing now. I work a lot in universities and I see now online jobs, whereas before COVID, there was never any online jobs. And after the COVID sort of boom of online teaching started to go and people, the world stopped being locked down and went face to face again. Yes, the amount of online teaching went down because face-to-face returned, but it is still there. And you still get a lot of students, especially one-on-one students, wanting to do online classes. So it's definitely something, either you go work for a company or work for yourself, that I do think is here to stay and will continue, my opinion. But beyond sort of online teaching, quite often you'll go for a job which is a face-to-face job, but they will ask you, the managers who are interviewing, they will ask you about what online tools you use in the face-to-face classroom. So don't just think that as an online teacher you would use these tools. No, also think, if you're face-to-face, how might you get these tools that I'm about to talk about into your face-to-face classes, because that will help you with interviews and it will also help you in your class to improve your students. Students expect to use tech. There is a sort of thought, and this goes across all the age ranges, for using technology. Students want to use it. They want to be shown good websites. They want to be shown how to use it. So again, this is something going forward that will help you. And it can definitely add value to your lessons, because it can help students with their weaknesses. You can direct them towards a certain tool for vocabulary, for example. It can also sort of add value to you as an online teacher to make you more marketable, because you can say, yes, you get a live face-to-face hour with me online on Zoom or something like that. But also beyond that, I will show you tools to help you to learn yourself. This kind of thing students really, really like. Right, going to talk a bit about vocabulary, grammar, and then the 4 skills: speaking, reading, listening, writing. Okay, and then talk a bit about hardware. So first of all, vocabulary. Now, I think vocabulary is one of the best ways. I think you teaching online. Sorry, let me start again. Online tools are one of the best ways to increase vocabulary. Yes, you can teach vocabulary in class, but you sort of do have some issues in that you can only really within sort of an hour teach sort of 10 words. You might also teach 10 words and the students know 2 of them or 3 of them. So that's sort of 30% where they're just doing revision. Whereas if they're working themselves on vocabulary outside the classroom, they can really sort of improve quite quickly. Now, 3 of my favorite tools, although and all of these tools, some are paid, some are free for a while and then they're paid, and then some of them are free for a certain number of students and then it goes up. So, you know, I'm not going to say they're all free, but ones that I found that I can use pretty well and quite easily. What the most important for me is Quizlet, but also I've looked at Memrise and Wordle. Now, there is a sort of school of thoughts that with vocabulary especially, but also the other skills, if you gamify vocabulary learning, then it can increase the motivation. It can also increase the retention, the way that they remember these words. And students, I think, quite like games. You know, we're all used to just sitting on our phone, just playing a little game. Students kind of like this. So those are 3 that are worth checking out if you want to sort of gamify your vocabulary learning. This one, VisuWords and Word Hippo, I've just had a look at. I've not used it so much, but basically it's a thesaurus, but it uses sort of visual tools. It's obviously online. So thesaurus is where it gives a student extra words that have a similar meaning, synonyms, and they can get it from a book. I have got a lovely thesaurus up there on my office shelf, but this one is like an online one with more visual. So it's great for visual learners, these 2. Youglish is another one. So basically what this works is it gives the students a real world example of a vocabulary. So you could, for example, teach the 10 words, then you can say, right, for homework, find 3 real world examples. And then it generally takes you to a YouTube page where someone comes up who's talking in an authentic way and using that word in a real sentence. So I think these are really good ways to try and increase your vocabulary, and they're all worth looking at. Okay, grammar. So Grammarly is a tool you might have seen. They advertise quite a lot on YouTube. Basically, it's like a really good grammar checker that you get on a word processing software. And I know students that do use this. Now, there are teachers that say students shouldn't use this. They should try and, you know, fix their own grammar mistakes themselves. There are others that are like, yeah, this is a tool. Why not use it? Okay. I'm sort of on the fence with it. I think they should have a go at it themselves and then try and fix it themselves. And if they can't, then something like Grammarly can work pretty well. What I would also say is that some of these tools aren't necessarily aimed at people learning English. A lot of these grammar checking tools are actually aimed for people who can speak English to a high level, but they just want something to check their grammar. So sometimes it works, but it doesn't necessarily work with quite low levels. No Red Ink, I've not tried myself, but I've heard good things about it. Now, ChatGPT, I have used with my students, and how I've used it is they type their essay into Microsoft Word or whatever it might be, and then I say to them, right, okay, get ChatGPT to highlight your grammar errors, not correct them, highlight them, and they copy and paste it into ChatGPT. They say, show me my grammar mistakes, and then it will highlight them. I think that kind of thing works pretty well. Then you got quill.org and Grammarflip, and these are basically grammar lessons. So if you've got a student that is having trouble, let's say with the past perfect, how to use the past perfect, you could direct them towards this, tell them to find a past perfect lesson, then they'll get some sort of feedback with that one. The British Council have a Learn English app. So this is sort of a self-study. Students can just, tune in on the bus, on the train, or whatever it is. It has grammar practice questions. So again, if you've got students that are making lots of grammar mistakes, these tools can help them, because there's only so much you can do, especially if you're in a group class with all of these with students, to try and improve their grammar. So these are how many we've got there? 6 different things that are worth, I believe, checking out. Please, if you've used any of these, please do put in the comments. If you think one's better than the other, please do put that in the comments. The more sort of talk we can get going in the chat, the better, and the more we can learn, because these are just my opinion. I might be wrong. You might find that you disagree with me or agree with me. And also loving the hellos. We've got Maria's in Madrid. Hi, Mikhail. How you doing? Nice to see everyone. Right. Listening activities and online websites. So Hello, I think is how you pronounce this one. You've also got ESL Cyber Listening Lab and ESL Fast. Now, I think that these are pretty good. You might find that for some sort of exercises, but what I'm trying to say is that the listening sort of goes up and down in terms of quality. But these basically are audio libraries, so they're quite authentic. You get some transcripts, so students can read it word for word, which can be useful, especially on like the second or third listening. They also quizzes on what they've heard, so it's good for sort of understanding different sort of comprehension. Then if you're going to try and sort of make up your own ones or direct them towards more authentic listenings for them to practice, obviously there's lots of different podcasts. Now, they vary in content. They vary in sort of age and cultural appropriateness. So these are sort of things to be careful of. But you do find if you type into a podcast provider, ESL listening or EFL listening, you will find activities on there. There's also YouTube channels. If you put in like EFL comprehension, you will get different sort of activities on there. Also, TED Talks are pretty good. And there are some TED Talks where EFL lessons have been made about them. So these are worth looking at. But I think what you'll find is that there's not as much out there for listening in terms of guided activities as there are on the other skills. And quite a lot of the listening is just go listen to it, which you've got to really have a purpose when you go listen to something. Okay, speaking tools that you might use in the classroom. Loads of good ones here. So Vocaroo is how I pronounce it. Basically, this is where the students can record their voice. They can record their voice on their phone or on a microphone or the headset, whatever it might be. And then they can listen back to it for pronunciation practice. I've also got students to sort of record themselves and then they send the file to someone else, or you put them in a Dropbox, and the other student has to listen to it and type down what they've heard. That kind of thing can help with typing speed. It can also help with the listening activities. Flipgrid, I really like. Flipgrid is basically it's like a discussion website, whereas instead of, it's almost like a chat room where people type, but they don't. They record a video. So what I do is I set them a topic, and it could be something like an essay title. It could be talk for 1 minute about something. The students then record themselves talking about it, either with a webcam or on their phone. Then underneath that one, after they've uploaded it, another student can reply with a video chat. Oh, I like that. Or I think you might have made this grammar mistake. Or yeah, I agree with you. I disagree. That kind of thing. It works really well. You can, and then as a teacher, you can read through we can listen to all the discussions. Obviously, for live speaking, you've got something like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, put it out into break rooms, all that kind of thing. Good for discussions. I've not used ChatGPT or something called Pretty Polly. I've used ChatGPT, but I've not used it for this, for speaking activities. But I have heard of teachers that do use it for AI-powered conversations. I don't know. If you've used these for AI-powered conversations, please do put it in the chat and let us know whether it worked or whether it didn't work. But again, it could be a good tool going forward for a student to pretend where they are having a conversation, but not with a human. They're having a conversation with the internet. Right, reading. So you've got read theory, and basically these are adaptable reading exercises. So how that works is you've got the text, the students have got the text, and you can sort of adapt the questions. You can add some questions yourself. It works pretty well sort of for doing online reading exercises. And I do know teachers that actually use them in class instead of being outside the classroom. So instead of, printing off a worksheet and then writing and then printing off some questions, this kind of thing you can do in class. You got something called Common Lit, and again, these are sort of texts, lots of different texts that have comprehension questions. It's less adaptable than read theory, but again, it can be quite useful. You've also got these ones which are a bit more sort of traditional reading, where there's sort of PDFs you can print, that kind of thing. There's stuff on the BBC Learning English website. There's the Breaking News English website. There's also One Stop English. One Stop English has been one of my favorites. I really like the articles they have on One Stop English. And you get really good news articles, and they quite often are in different levels as well. So you get an advanced level, and an intermediate, and an elementary or pre-intermediate level. It can be quite interesting, good for vocabulary learning. Also, they quite often have like speaking activities with them as well. So again, these are all worth looking at. Just something to be aware of that I've just sort of remembered and should have said earlier is that these websites, some of them are aimed at people, students that are in high school and not learning English. They're like normal high school students in an English speaking country, and this is because obviously they need to do reading exercises. So some of these can be quite good. Okay, so you could direct your students towards it, but maybe direct them towards depending on the age range. Okay, so if you've got advanced levels students, you might sort of say to them, okay, go on to these websites. If it's telling you, it might not be on levels, but it might be on like age ranges. Maybe go for like 15, 16-year-olds, because that way their reading is on par with an English speaking 15 or 16-year-old, if that makes sense. As I was talking, I'm not sure whether that did. Perhaps I need to use a speaking website. I'm loving all the chat that's coming up on the screen. Really good. Please do keep the ideas coming in. It's great to get these. Right. So some of the hardware that you need. So you don't need to go out and spend a lot of money. The key thing to work online is to have a fast and a stable internet connection. Now, what is fast? So if you're in somewhere like South Korea, they have super fast internet. The internet really works. It's kind of fast wherever you go. Here in Ireland, what I might call fast, because I'm quite in a town centre, might be different from what someone has rurally. So it does sort of make a difference. Now, you will see jobs advertised where they say we need to check the speed of your connection before we give you the job. And how that works is you go onto Zoom with them, you share your screen, you put up a website, and then you do an internet speed search. Generally, what they're looking for is for you to have a quicker connection than the country of the students that are there. So if you're going to go teach, if you're going to teach, let's say, for example, you're going to teach South American students, quite a different range of internet. It's not known as having some of the fastest internet in the world. As long as your connection is faster than the student's one, they tend to do it pretty well. Some stable is just as important. So whether you use a wired connection or a Wi-Fi connection, some companies say you've got to have a wired Ethernet connection. Now, I don't know how they check this. I've never had it checked, but I have worked for companies that say you need to have an Ethernet connection. It's just something to be aware of. You obviously need a webcam. Tend to need to have a sort of an exterior webcam. You can do them on laptops. That tends to work quite well, but you've just got to have it positioned right, because sometimes you're looking down. Quite often, some companies, they don't want you sort of looking down at the webcam. You've got to sort of have it on a little bit like eye level. So just something to be aware of there. Headphones with a microphone. So I've got a quite good microphone here, which I'm talking into now, so I don't need my headphones. But I have seen lots of lots of teachers that work online that don't have something like this. Okay, now I really do think just investing in something like this for $20 or $30 can really help really help your pronunciation when you're talking and listening at the same time. I really do think they help. Now, if you've got some sort of simple headphones like this, I've done observations where they haven't come across very well. So I do really think, yes, they're big, yes, they're bulky, but I do think they're worth investing in. A Mac or Windows computer. So I do all my work on a Mac, but I have come across companies that want you to have Windows. So you can install Windows on a Mac, although it's not the easiest thing to do. But generally, if you're going to buy one, go for Windows, which is more widely used. Now, a lot of companies, they'll either get you to teach on Zoom or Google Meets or something like that, but some do want you to use an app that you download. That's quite rare, but I have come across it. Some companies, they just want you to use a web browser, and then they have some software within the web browser to do the video calls. So just be a bit wary of that your computer is gonna be compatible with all the companies that you might possibly work for, and also be aware that generally you can't teach using a mobile phone or using a tablet. And the reason why is because it's quite hard to flick between windows. So if you've got your Zoom up on one screen and you want to share a different screen, you want to share like a picture or something like that. Now, I know some teachers that just hold up the picture behind them, but I think generally you want to just sort of share a screen or share a window within your screen if you've only got one screen. So just something to be aware of, that quite often working from an Android or an iPhone doesn't really work. Now, some optional, and I do sort of say optional, second monitor is I think brilliant. I think it works really well. I've got this PowerPoint here set up on the second monitor there. I just know that it's there. It's really good for sharing screens. With all computers, pretty much PCs, including laptops, you can share a second monitor. You just buy a cheap second monitor, you buy a HDMI cable, plug it in, and then Windows or your Mac will sort it all out. Okay. I've never done this, but I do know people that have a tablet and they connect that up to Zoom, and then they can share this. They can share the tablet screen, and that comes up on there. I think you can also do that with mobile phones, and I know that people do use that and do pretty well with it. And that way you might be able to get 3 screens. I don't know. It's not something I've ever done, but I do know teachers that have done it. And yeah, if you can get the hang of it, it works really well. Saying that, you do not necessarily need a second monitor, but I think it does make life a bit easier. Right, virtual classrooms. So obviously Zoom is probably the most widely used and the most known one. Now, the good thing about Zoom is that your students are probably used to it and students trust it. Part of the issue can be getting students to learn how to use the software. In Zoom, they are a bit used to it. You do have to be a bit careful when you're teaching to China. You've got to use a different website, all that kind of thing, but it is possible. It does happen. Microsoft Teams works pretty well. I've used Teams when I've taught like classes for a term, and I've sort of uploaded files. I've used it almost like a learning management system. I think it works pretty well like that. Again, students quite often like this. They do have to get a Microsoft account, but some do, some don't. Google Meet, I don't use it that often, but I was speaking to Alan, who's running the chat today, who says he's used Google Meet. I'm sure it works pretty well. Again, I'm guessing the students need a Google email address. Now, what it might be worth looking at if you're going to be doing this long term, or if you're going to do classes, is to think about using something called a learning management system. And basically, this is like a classroom, and all of the tools that I've sort of spoken about before sort of rolled into one. Now, some are free, some are not. Some are free for a certain number of students. It's just worth looking at. Now, My favorite of all of these is Blackboard, but it's not free. Google Classroom you can use Moodle, you can use Canvas, and you can sort of plan a term's work, the worksheets or whatever you want to do, or links. You can get them to come up on a certain week. You can sort of set the homework through that. There's lots of different tools that you can use them. You can do assessment through it. I'm going to talk about assessment in a minute, but this is the sort of thing that you might want to do, and they're worth checking out and worth looking at. And within all of these, they have a whiteboard, but you might want to use a separate whiteboard software. There's one called Miro and whiteboard.fi, which works pretty well as a standalone whiteboard. I just use the one in Zoom, but it is possible to use these ones. Sort of have a bit more functionality. Okay, right. Lesson planning. So Microsoft Create and Google Docs have templates for lessons. Now, if you would need to adapt these to make them EFL friendly, ESL friendly, but they can be a good starting block for creating lessons. These are tools that help you to plan your lessons. Something called Plan Book and something called Common Curriculum. I've not used these myself. I have had a quick look at them, and I think they've got way forward. But because I've been teaching for 20 years, I can write a lesson plan quite quickly. This is a good one. I always think is Teachers Pay Teachers. It's basically you upload your lessons and you can get paid for them if other teachers buy them. There's also Busy Teacher, ESL Library, One Stop English, TEFL, and then the British Council. Now, these are basically sort of libraries of lesson plans. So what they have lots of different activities. You could put in the type of grammar you want, the type of vocabulary you want, and you'll find a lesson plan and you'll find the materials that go alongside it. All of these are definitely worth a try, I think. Now, assessing the students, I think online is really, really good. Google Forms, and I use Google Forms for online quizzes. So I do like vocabulary quizzes. Once I've written them once and I have stored them, you can use them over and over again. The students can, you send them the link, they do it, you get the quiz, you can see whether they've learned the vocabulary you're doing. I think they work really well. Another one I've heard of is Socrative. If anyone's tried that, please do put that in the chat if it's good or not. Google Classroom and Edmodo are learning management system with quizzes. So they can pretty easy. You can integrate the quizzes quite easily into your online lessons. So, and then they sort of, all the data stored within those, and you can sort of see how students progress. Quizzes and Booklet, I'm guessing that's how you pronounce it, is again, like quite interactive. They have some quite nice different types of activities and different types of quizzes on it. Vocaroo and Loom allow you to give audio and video feedback. So students can upload a text, for example, you can read it and you can give them some audio and video feedback. Conclusion. Don't overwhelm the students with tech. It can be quite easy to give students lots and lots of different types of tools, and you think you're a really good teacher because you're doing a bit of this, you're doing a bit of that. Now I'll throw in this, and yes, look how good I'm going to look with all these fancy tools. Students can get a bit overwhelmed with it. So if especially some students, if they're not as techy as you think they are, getting them to then do a new website can be quite tricky. So just something to be aware of, all right? See if one learning management system does everything you need, and then maybe you don't need to use all those other ones, or the ones I've been talking about. I would start with Google Classroom. MS Teams, I think, is also pretty good. Just check if one thing does everything you need, okay? Some teachers, and I think this is perfectly fine, they use some sort of shared document and they use Microsoft Zoom, and they just use that. There's no other tools that they use, and they are successful online teachers. Sometimes simple is quite easy way to do it. And I think that's fine. If you're really, really good, Google Docs, Microsoft Online Docs, you can do quite a lot with them, okay? And I think that's perfectly fine. And if you've got students that that you're only going to be with you a couple of lessons just to get them through to a certain level, to fix a certain fault, this might be an easy way to do it. Be aware that you might need to teach the tech. So I went into, when I started teaching online 10 years ago, and I was sort of in my early 30s, I thought that I would be a bit of a dinosaur with tech. And I thought that all my students around the world would be red hot with the tech, and it would be me that was sort of the problem with the tech, not them. I have learned quite quickly that students aren't as good at tech as you think they are, and that includes youngsters. David's just put in there something about TikTok on the chat, and it's quite true that a lot of students know and they want to do social media, okay, and they don't really want to do much else beyond that. And if you sort of then throw a new way of doing something, they get really, really lost. You will also find that quite a lot of students aren't very good at typing with keyboards. So that's quite slow. You see lots of this one finger things. So that can take a bit of time, especially at the start. If you're going to use one of these tools, for example, I use Flipgrid a lot. I like Flipgrid, but your students will have problems, not because Flipgrid's bad. They'll just have students because they've had problems because they've never used anything like this, or they've only ever used WhatsApp, and they want to use WhatsApp. And maybe you can do it through WhatsApp. I don't necessarily know, but when they're like, oh, why do I have to do this? Oh, this is taking too long, or this is too many clicks, or I didn't know how to set up my account, or the registration didn't come through. You've got to be really aware that this is an issue, and you've got to know the software that you're sending them to. Right. Also, be aware of a student's cultural and hardware limitations. So if you are showing them, podcasts, make sure they're culturally and age appropriate. Also, you will find that a lot of students don't have a PC, that a lot of students use mobile phones or they use a tablet, and getting them to flick between different tools can be a bit of an issue. And it can also be slow. You'll see them disappear, then you'll see them come back. It can be a bit of a problem. So just be aware. And quite often when I meet a student for the first time, I ask them what tech they use. And if they use a laptop, woohoo. If they say I'm using a mobile phone, and a lot of low-level ESOL classes use mobile phones, it can be very difficult. And a lot of the time you're just limited to sort of showing them something behind you, holding up something instead of doing shared screens. Thank you. I hope you found that useful. I did tell you a lot of different tools there. Go back and just scroll through me and just look at the slide and see if any of these you like the look of. Try them all yourself. Don't just send them out until you unless you've actually used it yourself and you can check it. Right, some questions. I'm loving all the hellos and all the people. Paula, I'm not in Dublin. No, I'm in Belfast. Are you in Dublin? I can't remember. No, you said you're in America, I think, didn't you, Paula? I'm not. Right, lots of chat about online dictionaries. Yes, David, Paula, thank you. Yeah, the online dictionaries work really, really well, especially for pronunciation. I quite like the Google dictionary. If you just type into Google define and then put the word in, you'll get loads of cool stuff on there, and loads of you'll even get sort of diagrams of how to present it. I think that's true. I think that's really good. Mikhail, yeah. So YouTube, some accents are difficult for your students. Yeah, it can be. Now they can slow it down on YouTube. That's something that you can do. You can get the subtitles up, that kind of thing. But what I would say is if they are going to go and do something like an IELTS test or a Trinity test or a Cambridge exam, they probably need to know a lot of different accents. So this can be quite useful for that. Okay. But yes, a lot of YouTubers don't actually speak very clearly. Great. Loving all the chat. Thank you very much. Well, let me get to the first question. Chris, hi. Can I recommend particular headphones with a microphone? So I've got this Logitech one. When I put it on though, I'm not sure I love these blue bands. I kind of wish I hadn't thought it through. I wish I'd thought it through a bit more. But I find the Logitech, it's a G432. I don't know if that's the latest model. I find that works pretty well, but I'm sure there are others out there. I am looking for a Bluetooth one because the wires annoy me. How do you set up a double screen? So pretty much you buy another monitor, you buy a HDMI cable, you plug it in, and then you go to the settings, and then you can either extend your display or you can mirror your display. What you probably want is to extend your display. You can set it up so when your mouse goes from one side, it goes into the other, or you can set it up above. I don't have 3, but I've seen teachers that have 3, so the mouse can go all the way to the left, all the way to the right. I think that works pretty well. Yeah, and then David has got some good things in there. Can you separate screen share and students on 2 screens? Yeah, so what I do is I have on my second screen everything I'm going to share. Or if I've sent them out a link to something like a shared document, I have that up on there. So basically the tool that you're using, I put on my second screen. And then all I have on my main screen is my student or students looking at me. So that way I can keep an eye on them, but also see what they're doing if they're typing into a shared document, or if I need to share a screen, or if something comes up in the chat. So that's what I do. Yeah. If anybody else does it a different way, please do put it in the chat. See, Supana is saying Teams doesn't work well in the city. Absolutely fine. Yeah, good. Sorry, I just highlighted the question. Let me just highlight that question again. What is the best, simplest for students who are not taking? I think Zoom works pretty well. I think probably better than Teams. I think Zoom is just easy because you just send out the link and they click on the link, they log in, then they're away. That's just one-on-one. Now, if you're looking for a learning management system which does a lot of different things, then I think probably Teams is quite good if they can get to use it. But I think it has issues with speed and things like that at times. Yeah, but maybe the Google ones as well work as well. Yes. Right. Thank you for the chat. I'm just reading through as I'm talking. It's really nice. Hi, Adam. When using Zoom, you want students to view something online. What are your thoughts on either them using second window or using their phone as second? I think it's absolutely fine for them to use their phone as a second screen. That is something that they can do on Zoom. Yes, if they can get the quiz up. Now, the only problem I have with that is them typing into it can be tricky. If they're going to go take an IELTS test or something like that, they need to learn how to type on a keyboard because that's what they will use. So I like them to type into something. Okay. But I have no problem with them using it. And if they've got a second monitor, amazing. I have never, ever come across a student that's told me they've got a second monitor. You might have some that do have it, but I've never had some that do use it. Okay. But good question. I might even try that. Try and get them to use their phone as a second monitor. Might work well. I think that's all the questions. I'm loving all the comments. Thank you, Paula. Enjoy your lesson that you've got to run to. Yeah, I'm really enjoying all the comments. Look, I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm going to get around to reading all the comments after we start talking. Thank you for tuning in. Teach yourself just 1 or 2 tools and master those. You know, if you think that you could do with having some extra, if you think that you could use with having some extra grammar, then, you know, learn some of the grammar tools. Okay. Send them out, learn them well, get them working well. If you think that you need some help with listening, just, you know, get to know one of the websites really, really well. So you can send them a specific link or a specific listening to go to. All right. And then from that, just go slowly with the tech. Introduce it slowly to your students because they might not be as quick as you think they will be. Thank you for tuning in. If you do have any further questions, please do go onto our website, TEFL.org. You can ask us some questions on that. We've also got blog pages where you can do search for things like online tools. There's loads of things that come up there. We also have a Facebook group, like a Facebook discussion group. You can go on that. You can talk to other teachers, ask if anyone uses it. You will find people that can help you with that. If you type into Facebook, TEFL org students, you will find that. But please, if you did like this, please do give us a like. Please do put in the comments that you liked it. It's always good to read them wherever you are in the world. Thank you, everybody. Have a good morning, afternoon, or evening. Thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye.